All right, guys, it's the top of the hour, so we're going to get started. Welcome again to Links to Success. This is part 2 of a 5-part web series on how to reboot your tech career. I'm Jennifer Strickland. I'm a technical recruiter in Denver with our direct hire team. I'm your host for today, and I'd like to start with some few housekeeping things before we jump into our presentation. So our session is being recorded. If you would prefer to jump off, now would be your time to opt out. If you're using your computer speakers and you're having challenges with sound, I recommend that you call in. We also have a closed captioning option down at the bottom as well. We will be giving out a handout after today's webinar. Check your email for that. And we do ask that you stay muted, not because we don't want to hear from you. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. We want to hear everything that you have to say, and we want to take in your questions, and we're going to save some time at the end for a Q&A section. So now that we've got that taken care of, I bet you're wondering, why would we do this series? We did create this series to help people who are currently furloughed or laid off due to the market right now, and to help them differentiate themselves in this already competitive market. So we tried to pick some relative topics for those who haven't visited us previously. For our last episode, that was on resumes. Today we're covering job search. Next time we'll be covering networking, then interviewing, and we'll be ending with salary negotiations. Our web series is hosted by EdgeLink, which is a premier boutique staffing firm specialized in technology. We're local to Denver and Portland, and also Salt Lake City. We have 2 different sides, contract and direct hire. And our motto is that we're in the business to positively impact the lives of the people and the clients that we touch. So another thing you might be wondering, why would you want to work with an agency? A few reasons. Obviously, you want to work with us. 1, because we're pretty awesome. 2, we're no cost to the candidates, and we know it would make a good fit. We're pretty close to the clients. We chat with them on the regular to make sure that we know exactly what they're looking for, what their culture is like, what they have to offer you, and then also we can pick you guys out to make sure that you have the right stuff that you can offer them as well. So today, we are doing our style a little bit differently. We're going to go with a Q&A type of section, and we're going to have a couple of guest speakers. Both of our guest speakers are from in-house EdgeLink originals. We have Josh Breckheisen and Iman Behboudi. Between the 2 of them, we've got multiple years of recruiting experience, and we're happy to share that with you. I did mention that today's topic is on job search, so we're going to take that approach. This is me. I'm your host for today, Jennifer Strickland. These are our guests, Josh Breckheisen and Iman Behboudi. And today we're talking about job search, sniper versus shotgun approach. So let's get started. We're going to jump right in. Josh and Iman, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Great,
Thanks
I'm
for
here as
joining us,
well.
guys.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
So let's get started. So I think that where we should start with our topic is, where should you start in your job search? So let's get going. Josh, what do you think about where to start?
Well, the first thing that always happens when I talk to candidates out there is they tell me what their approach is right now. I know we talked about it a little bit when I went over the resume portion last week, but it's simply that old marketing adage: if you're taking this shotgun approach, where you feel like you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing your services to everyone, you're really marketing to no one. And so I want to make that huge distinction right from the get-go. That's not to say that there are certain times where you use a shotgun approach, but if you're really just going after everyone and everywhere, then you're not as focused as you could be. And so the first thing you have to do is start from within. You need to figure out, what are the things that you want. As a candidate, if I'm a passive candidate where I'm currently employed, I'm going to take a different approach than if I'm an active candidate. Maybe I'm unemployed because of COVID or any other number of situations. The approach might be a little different. You might go for more of a shotgun method if you are currently unemployed, or blend them. Okay, so this is the theme throughout. So let's talk about that within this first step of, where do I start? Starting within and figuring out exactly what you want. Again, if we look at the situation where I'm a passive candidate, I'm currently employed, you automatically are in a situation where you can be more patient, you can be more picky. You can say, hey, I'm currently an SDET, but I really want to get into Angular, for example. I want to really be a front end developer. You've got some time to develop a plan and write down. Just start with the things that you want. Okay. Now, if you're in a situation where you just recently got laid off, you might be in a situation where you don't have as long as a runway, so you need to take a more efficiency approach, which is to say, okay, what are the industries I've worked in? Let's say SaaS medical, right? Um, and specifically take an approach of finding companies that will line up with the industry you've been working in and the skill set, right? Because you got to work more efficiently. So you have to look at your past experience and just automatically, find what's most efficient, because time is of the essence in that situation. So those are the two different kind of styles when we think about how to start. So you want to know, I have listed here, you want to know your locations that you're willing to go to. We're in a great situation where, because of remote work, that's expanded a little bit. And then as well, you want to start with your salary ranges. We'll go over that a lot when we get to the salary negotiation piece, but this is something to know beforehand, where exactly your needs are or your wants are. And
So
go ahead, Jen.
I have a question for you on that too. So for salary range, let's say that's something that you want to figure out before, you've targeted your locations. Like I wouldn't mind living in Denver. I actually really like Portland. And I think I would like to make this much. When you look at jobs on LinkedIn and so on, they don't necessarily have the salary range listed. So what would you do in that situation where like what salary target you want? How do you find those jobs that are within that salary range?
When you're looking at across markets, is what you mean?
Yeah, across markets and also kind of in general, because you know what you want to make, but you're kind of shooting in the dark when you throw your application out on LinkedIn and you don't know what they're offering.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I have, yeah, absolutely. I actually have something that I wanted to mention about that. Is I think the two things that are important to keep in mind when taking those things into consideration is you have to do your research on not only the average cost or average cost of living in that area, right? But you also need to take things into consideration of what type of state are you in. Like states like Texas, they don't have an income tax, right? So you take things like that into consideration. You also take cost of living into consideration, and then also nationally, you can find averages for whatever position it is that you're looking for. So, for example, if you're an SDET looking to remain an SDET, you can see what the average salary is of an SDET nationally, and then more specifically, right, going from shotgun to sniper, right, you can look at, okay, what market am I trying to be employed in, and then what are the factors that I need to take into consideration.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, we've said SDET a few times here. It's a software developer in test. Okay. So just to clarify there. Yeah, there are many tools out there. If you just simply Google cost of living calculators, you can find ones that will help you to figure out those cost of living differences. And as you mentioned, Iman, for example, if you were to move from Utah to Denver, you got to look at city taxes as well. So there's lots of things to consider there.
Property tax in Portland is a killer.
Exactly. So, but again, just bringing this back to, okay, let's start with, it's looking from within to see, where you want to be, because you can't even have those discussions. You can't even go to that next step of, well, what's the cost of living there and what type of companies and all those things if you don't start with where you want to be. and where you want to be ultimately in your career, which positions are right for you. So everything has to start with figuring out, really your identity as a candidate, and within your career, what you want, right? Where you want to take your career, starting with the end in mind, and start taking inventory of these things. That's how you're going to start your process.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. Next, we had a little bit about career mapping. So kind of like taking that web of all these different ideas that you've got in your head about what you want to do and putting that on paper. So talk to me, Josh, about what that looks like and kind of what the process of that looks like.
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is get this idea. Everybody's different. Some people have a logical approach. Some people have a more emotional approach, like you're dreaming of, where you want to be at the end of your career. Or you may just look at it and say, well, ultimately, to achieve my goals, I want to be, at this level. I want to be a business owner, or I want to be an executive, or honestly, I love just the art of what I do, and I want to code for the rest of my career. Knowing that then will help you throughout your career. And it's okay. There's some times where you say, I think I want to be in management. And then you get into a management position and you realize management isn't for you, or you don't do it that well. I mean, that's fine. But you need to start thinking about these things and doing them intentionally. I talk about a life by design. And when you're able to, architect, just like you would architect any sort of software, you start architecting your career and where you want to be. And the first thing you want to do then with this piece is really write down the position title that you want to be at the end of your career. And then I want you to research position titles that will progress you there, right? In other words, you have to start out, maybe if you're brand new in your career, you got to start out as an intern, right? Then you got to move into a junior developer position. And then let's say you got to start out in QA, because sometimes that's the easiest way to break in the industry, the IT industry. Start out as a QA, then you move to an SDET, a software developer and test, and then you can move to a developer position. And maybe that's where you want to stay for your career. But you need to research how to get there in the most efficient ways. That's not just within those career or those like position job tracks, but it's also how do they look within the specific companies that you're interested in, because they may differ. They may have different titles. There may be companies you're at that allow you to make those lateral moves across the organization, and there's others that don't. Okay. And so this is all part of mapping it. It's creating a career by design, and it's starting with the end in mind and then mapping it backwards.
Yeah, and I would add that more specifically even than the title progression of that, think about the job function progression of what it is that you're looking to do. Because depending on the size of the company, you could have a senior level position and somebody could not have that senior in their title somewhere else, but they could be the same level of developer, right? Or touch on the same technologies, for example. So I think it's important to know the title progression, but also to take those things into consideration when looking at that. You want to focus on the job functions that you have to have and have to know, and then move forward from there. For example, if your goal is to become an IT manager because you know that managing people and dealing with people is something you're passionate about, you need to know that, you're going from tier 1 help desk on upward towards system administrator and then going, right? So it is a title as well, but knowing the functions of the type of job that you're going to be doing to get to that point is important.
Yeah, guys, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I tell people that myself if they're like, well, I don't exactly know which role to be in next, I would say go look for your dream job that you have as of right now and see what the functions are for that, and then go down to your level and see where you can do a parallel to get to that point, because it might not be right now, but it could be further on down the road. So do what you got to do now to get to that dream job.
Yeah.
So,
And I will be, and before we leave this topic, I know we're probably ready to move on, but I just want to mention as well, kind of, we talked about the shotgun versus sniper approach. Shotgun approach in this sense might be, hey, I'm the kind of person who wants to be wearing multiple hats. I want to be a developer. I also want to be a project manager. I also want to help develop product. I want to be involved in making the decisions. And so if that's you, that's this jack of all trades type of, you really have to understand that about you, because it's gearing your career in two different ways. And I always tell people that when you think about your career long term, you have to think, shotgun is like that scenario right there. And there are advantages to being a jack of all trades. But then there's also advantages of being that sniper. When I have a major large organization that I've worked with, call me and say, hey, I need a senior Java developer with 12, 13 years of experience, and specifically with these type of tools, then they're looking for someone who's really been specific in that language for a lot of years and not deviated from it. Sometimes you get developers who are multilingual, so to speak, right? They work with lots of different technologies, and then there's some clients who want someone just very, very focused on certain tech stacks and certain languages. So just map that out. Think about it a little bit. There's pros and cons to both.
Absolutely. And one quick thing to add to that before we move on is, it's knowing that about yourself is what Josh is saying is so important, is because, you being a jack of all trades, but some people consider a jack of all trades a master of none, right? So it depends on what type of organizations you're targeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but if you want to be a jack of all trades, you might be a little bit more suited towards startup, smaller type companies than you would big corporations, because the corporations have individual titles and individual positions within that organization that have very specific job functions, which is like you're saying, sniper versus shotgun, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Those tend to be more in the startup world. Exactly.
right. Perfectly said, guys. And I'll add to this too. I know when people start their job search, it's this kind of like dreary and gloomy feeling, because there is so much introspection that goes into it. You have to really know yourself and know what you want. So I think it may take a lot of time and it may be a little bit taxing for you, but I think it's really important to sit down and write down what you want and kind of go through the steps that we'll lay out for you. So leading into that, sitting down and writing things down, what about your skills? Talk to us about this, Josh. What does this look like, going through what you need and what you have to offer?
Yeah, this is really important, and it's important to know what skills you have and what skills companies want. When we talk about, especially when it comes to like the development side of IT, most of my clients and hiring managers, they'll overtly tell me, we're going to ask them some tough questions. We're not so much worried about the answers they give. We're worried about how they think through it, right? And so this is an example of just knowing your skill set and what companies are looking for. There are roles within development where you don't have to be that problem solver. You don't have to be the person who can really think through all those steps. You can just be an executor, right? And so you just have to understand where those nuances are and where your strengths and weaknesses lie. So as you research, obviously for those who are more experienced, you've probably got a handle on this because you've seen different environments that you've worked in. But especially when you're getting started out, as you're starting out, let me rephrase that, researching job descriptions out there and just seeing right now what the relevant technologies are. Because with IT, I mean, it changes so quickly. And what happens is everybody wants to migrate from legacy systems to the newest systems out there, to the newest technologies. And so what you need to really be prepared for is a fast changing environment, and knowing what some of the, all the different technologies that are out there and where you really want to be. So as you write those down, you just create an inventory of the skills that are needed for those positions and the tools that are needed. Now, once you have an inventory of these positions that you really want to be in, again, let's say it's a Linux system admin. Okay, and that sort of a situation, you need to know, what are the different Linux type systems and who are their makers? IBM, right? And has their own box, right? There's different operating systems, and so just having that understanding of what type of users, knowing that the IBM solution is a lot more expensive. So companies that use the IBM solution are going to be different. Same thing with Oracle. Big, massive companies use Oracle because Oracle's really expensive. So you just have to know that, hey, if you're going into Oracle, you're really not going to, that's not going to match up with the jack of all trades, small, startup company so if those are in contrast with each other, you need to know that now so you can avoid that. And I see it all the time. I don't know if you guys have run into the same thing, but you'll see people who didn't realize that they were going down a dead end because of something similar to that. And then once you have that mapped out, those skills that you need, the tools, now you can take an internal inventory of that and see exactly what you need to do to get there. And there's all sorts of solutions out there. There are, some cost more money than others, but there are definitely solutions that you can start working on to learn Salesforce. If it that position requires Salesforce or Kubernetes, or and it's possible that your current company will pay for that if you're having open conversations with them about that. That can help lead to your advancement in your career.
Yeah, and this may seem like Jennifer said, like taxing or like a lot, right? But really, to simplify, you really just have to understand, not only what it is that you are looking for out of this experience. Are you trying to use this next opportunity as a stepping stone to get, as Josh said, where you want to be ultimately? Or, are you tired of bouncing from position to position and you want to find something that is more, long term, in which case then you have to really decide, what is the industry that I'm trying to work for? What types of companies have I had the best experience working with? And then you take that information and then you start to understand, okay, if there's a specific industry that I want to be in, what technologies are used and what capacity are they used? And then you can go from there. And if it's skills that you already have, that that's already aligning well. And if there's skills that you're looking to obtain, then you can go from there. But I think the number one thing that's important is to remember exactly what it is that you're looking for, and then use the resources you have at hand to go obtain that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely does make sense. Anything else? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and that's where keywords and things like skill matching and those things come into play, is because now what are the keywords and key technologies that are used within that industry or within the types of companies that you're looking to work for. And then you can see yourself, and one thing to keep in mind when applying is you don't have to be a 100% skill match in order to apply for something. Don't let those things deter you from applying to something that you really want. The key, though, is to not just, spray and pray, if you will, and just send your application out. You want to tailor those things to job descriptions and to specific companies and industries so that you stand out above the pack.
Right. That's an excellent segue into what I was going to say, actually. So I'm glad I let you interject. So last week, we talked about resumes and how to build your resume. So you may be thinking, why would we talk about the job search and how to build your skill set after we've talked to you about resumes and building your resume? So I would think that we've got shotgun and we've got the sniper method. And in our first episode, we helped you build your resume so that you have this shotgun resume. If you need to send that out and you're desperate and you're looking for a job and you need to get something, send that out. And your sniper method comes around when you've got that resume already built and you have a job description of something that you know you want to do, and you can take those two and you can compare them and cross over those keywords like you were just saying as well. And again, 80% match is perfect, is really great. And a lot of times the companies that we work for, they don't even know exactly what they're looking for. They're like, maybe some of this, maybe a little bit of that. If you could have the candidate sprinkle a little bit of this skill on top, that would add a cherry. So yeah, don't let that deter you at all. If you see a few match, even if it's a 50% match, sometimes I think that's still a really good
Yeah, if you have
shot.
the core ability that they're looking for example, let's say they're looking for, a back end SQL developer, and you can code SQL, you can create SQL queries like nobody's business, then you're in business, even if you don't have some of the other tools around that, right? So even if maybe you don't have experience with Oracle, but you're great with SQL, and they're willing to bring you into the Oracle solution, right? So great points. All my managers want to throw in everything in the kitchen sink, right? And so that's a good point. Don't be deterred.
You want 8 years of experience, but that technology's only been out for 5.
Yeah.
We see that a lot. So we've talked about our approaches and how to start and where to get where you're going. So like I've said before, this can be a really daunting task for some people. So what we're trying to do here is help you pare it down and see exactly what you need to do. And I don't know if you're anything like me, I like really clear, concise instructions. So if hopefully we can just tell you this is what you should do, sit down, make a list, and get it going. Another thing that I would like to bring up is maybe we can touch on networking a little bit. I don't know how much time we have. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think let's talk about this specifically in how we're going to take our approach. Once we've done our internal inventory, now we've also figured out where we want to be, and we've done inventory on what it takes to get there, the technologies and the positions that we're going to need to get. Now it's time to start targeting the companies.
Right.
Okay. And so that's when you really start thinking sniper versus shotgun approach. Again, if we have that resume, as you mentioned, Jen, from, that we talked about last week, creating, it's a generic resume of sorts. It's targeted, it's focused, but not for every single company. And that's why we need to really translate, because every company has a different language, different culture, which translates to a different language, right? In other words, in job descriptions, they say it's a little bit different, have a little bit different terminology for different things. Some things will be similar, but now we got to think about, okay, specifically for each company, every company is different. And the more that you can take time out to find the companies that you're interested in, instead of just going on Indeed and Monster or whatever, Glassdoor, and just, something came up. Oh yeah, I don't know anything about that company, but I'm just going to send in my resume. Stop yourself. I don't encourage you to find stuff on LinkedIn and Indeed and just send in your resume right away. When you come across the position, this is more that shotgun approach. I'm teaching you to blend it. When you take that shotgun approach and you go to LinkedIn or Indeed or Glassdoor, all these places, the job boards. If you just send out your resume, it's not the best approach. And if you see that position and instead you resist the urge to just quickly in 2 seconds send out that resume, but you take a different approach, a more targeted approach, I promise you're going to see a big difference. And people don't believe me sometimes, but they will come to me and I'll say, okay, tell me how many positions you applied to in the last 30 days. And they'll be like, oh, I applied to like 60 positions. Okay, that's a shotgun approach, right? That person was taking a shotgun approach. And I'll say, how many, what was your response rate, right? How many responded to you? And they will usually say, this is no joke, they will usually say, about 5 to 10. It's just such a small amount of companies. And so at that point, you need to realize that approach is not working. If your ratios are better than that, then you might be in a little better position, maybe because your skill is in more demand, right? It just varies. Obviously a lamp stack is just not in as much demand as a senior Java developer. It just is what it is. So knowing that about what your career and skill set are will help you in this approach. So again, that shotgun approach of just sending everything out, to all these, stop that. Trust the process of, okay, I saw that position, slow it down. Let's take a little bit more of a hybrid approach between sniper and shotgun. And let's now go look and see if I know anyone over at that company. Kind of speaking to what you were saying, Jennifer, about the networking. Check your network and see who's there and what information you can find out, so you can take that more targeted approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing to keep in mind too is there are different layers to what we're saying about, sniper method versus shotgun method. Another thing to take into consideration is you might be the type of person that doesn't exactly know what industry or type of company you fit best with, and you aren't exactly sure how to get to that. A lot of times you need to use an interview process as a way of learning more about a company. I can't stress this enough. One thing I've always told my candidates is, you're not, by accepting an interview or by applying to an organization, you're not signing your life away. It's not like if they're interested, it's like, okay, well, done deal. You got to leave your current company. It's just as much an opportunity for you to vet out the company as it is for the company to vet you. So, keep that in mind. And you might be somebody, if you are somebody that knows exactly what types of companies and what industries you want to be in, then even more so, you need to take that sniper approach and go after those organizations and tailor your resume and go to the networking events that surround those types of companies and organizations. Whereas if you're somebody who is not exactly sure, you got to put yourself out there a little bit more. You got to go meet with more people, go have more conversations, do informational interviews, find those things out for yourself so that when the time comes, you can have the luxury of taking the sniper method and ultimately finding the type of company that you want to be with long term.
I love that, Iman. That's great. I agree, too, that sometimes the shotgun method can be really beneficial, especially just taking those informational interviews. Like you said, when you start something, you're not locked in to that company. Maybe you just found out a little bit of information that led you to the next step in your path. So yeah, great point. What I would like to kind of talk about a little bit is how do we take that sniper method and get to that point? So obviously we're like, if you need to start with the shotgun method, if you don't know what you want to do and what's going on really, then you'll have to kind of spray that out, do some informational interviews, so on and so forth. So when we get to the sniper point, what are some things that we can tell people, like, this is what you should do and this is a beneficial sniper method?
Absolutely, absolutely important. So once you've done all these things that we've talked about with the internal, and you have the sense of, let's say, for example, my industry expertise has been in medical SaaS software. What's really cool about IT is recency really matters and carries a lot of weight. So, if a lot of times when I'm talking to people, it's like, hey, you've spent pretty much your whole career in medical SaaS software, but that's awesome if you have. But what if you're in a situation where you've jumped around different industries? Well, and especially with tech guys, sometimes when I talk with folks, they're just like, oh yeah, I just want something interesting and cool, right? Something where I can solve problems. So you might not care as much, but I'm telling you, the people who are interviewing you care. And so that's the first thing I want you to think about when we're talking about the how-to on this, is how the past experience you have relates to this, what your current job search. Okay, so think about those companies that are within that industry. Think about the competitors of the last company you were at. Think about sub niches within the medical SaaS industry. There's dental, there's pharma, there's medical equipment, there's the billing side of the medical industry. There's all that billing software. And it's like, so you start thinking about the different, like, I call them contributors to the industry, people who provide all sorts of technology within that industry. And now you're leveraging your experience. And now you're compiling this list specifically of these companies. Okay. That's the first step that I want to talk about. The second step is, now, again, we were just talking about it, when you use your network. Okay, I want you to find out if you have anybody in your network that is at that company before you do anything, before you send in any information. And here's where it gets really good. This is stuff you want to write down. How now do you reach out to them? You don't want to reach out to them and go, hey, I'm looking, blah, blah, blah. Boom. You have already just devalued yourself. It's like, imagine yourself if you just saw some really attractive person, and you're this single person. Imagine, this, if you're married, imagine when you were single. Could you imagine you going up to your wife or your husband when you first met him and said, hey, I really want to get married. Would you like to go out on a date? That's not the way to do it. And so the principle I teach is lead with value. Okay, this is hugely important. When you lead with value, then that is when you're going to get a response back, a stronger response. Give to get. The Dalai Lama used to give a gift to get donations. They wouldn't even have to ask for a donation. They would give you a flower, and then you would be like, oh man, thanks. What do you want from me? Well, if you want, please donate. And then people would donate, right? Because you give to get. So here's a quick way to do that, right? And this is not, if you're you don't have to say, hey, I'm desperate, I want to get married tomorrow, but you can say, hey, I've got my eye on your company. I really like what they do. Do you get any sort of referral bonus if you refer someone? Boom, right away. This is simple. I have different techniques I use that get more granular and providing more value, but that's an easy, simple one that everybody can use, whether you're passive or actively looking, because you're not saying, hey, oh, I'm looking, I want to get married today. You're just saying, hey, I have some interest there, and then showing that you care about the value you provide to them.
Right. So here's what I was thinking too. So I like these steps that you've provided, and for my input, I kind of feel like writing your resume is a very psychological thing, especially when you're using the sniper approach and you're targeting one certain company. If we know that the hiring manager wrote up this job description and he used, or she used, words that were in their head to make this job description, and you take those words off of that page and you use their own words, that will stand out to them. I also psychologically like to use the company's colors. If you have color on your resume, which I recommend, black and white resumes are a little bland, in my opinion, I would add a little bit of color. And then if you're targeting a specific company, take that company's colors and switch up your colors on there to give them that little bit of extra psychological match. Like, to them, that's just, oh, this person's already a match in my head. So that takes your resume and gets you in the door, like we talked about resumes last week. And then next week, we're going to talk about networking some more to further discuss what you were saying on networking. So join us for that too. And we're running a little bit low on time now. So Iman, what do you think? Do you have any input on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree with absolutely everything the both of you said. And the one thing that I would just add is kind of blending the two pieces together is, it's important to understand, like Josh said, what your value is. But like Jennifer's saying, branding is important. You want to brand yourself in the way that you want to be perceived. Now, you also want to be genuine to yourself, because if you don't brand yourself in a way that is true to you on a resume and you do get an interview, then they're going to be able to tell that maybe these things aren't genuine. The more you brand yourself and are consistent about your branding through all of your platforms, I think that is going to be really important and go a long way in terms of what you guys are saying, which like I said, I agree with everything you guys said. I just think it's important to keep in mind branding of yourself, knowing what your value is, and like Josh said, leading with that value. But then on this side, know what the company's brand is and what they stand for, because if you don't stand for those things, you're probably not going to be a good fit there.
Right. Well, to kind of wrap this up and put a little bow on it, we have two different approaches, and you may be in two different situations. Maybe you have a job and you're kind of comfortable, but you're passively looking because you think you could further your career in a different position, or there's not enough room to rise with the company that you're in right now. So you're passively looking and you have a little bit more time to spread out your research and target the companies that you want to target. So if you do take that approach, then take your time and do all of the research up front and still use that sniper method at the end. Maybe you've been laid off and you're in the situation where you need a job now. The severance wasn't enough to sustain you and your family, and you're moving on to something else, but you don't really know what that is. So use that shotgun method and put your well-crafted resume from our first episode. Put that well-crafted resume out there, see what interviews you get, and learn as much as you can up front. And then use the sniper method. So I think the ultimate thing that we're getting to right now is that the sniper method is the most effective. Do we all agree? Awesome. Okay, so sniper method is by far the most effective. And then when we get to the end of that, use your network. Using your network is so important. And we're going to talk more about how to do that in the next episode. So join us for that too. But also just be sure to write down what you have to offer. If you have in the forefront of your mind what you have to offer up front, then you just kind of have this air of confidence that you can lead into other things that you're doing as well. So we're going to move on to our Q&A section. And I appreciate you guys for joining us. This was such an informational topic, and I know it can be daunting, but just to give everybody a little bit of oomph, you can do it. You've got the time. Just go out there and get them. So let's wait for some questions to come in real quick, and we'll get going on our Q&A section.